Honorable Chief Minister of Meghalaya, Shri Conrad Sangma, Minister of Law and Education of Manipur, and my good friend Shri Basanta Singh, Honorable Shapan Das Gupta, who as member of the Parliamentary Committee on External Affairs took a lot of interest in the very issues that we're discussing today, Lieutenant General Kalita, Eastern Army Commander, Lieutenant General Panchanathan, GOC 101 area, Air Marshal Gogoi, distinguished participants, senior officials, friends. Namaskar and good afternoon. Let me, at the very beginning, congratulate the Indian Army for taking the initiative to host the Purvottar Swabhiman Utsav to highlight the contribution of the Northeast region to nation building. As Editor Wasibur Hussain said, this is a laudable effort, and it is both timely and useful in many senses. The topic of my own conversation or discussion today is, as was mentioned, India's Northeast region, vanguard of Act East policy. And here, of course, I think in some senses I'm on familiar ground because in a good part of my career I have worked on the neighboring countries, and I do believe that when we talk about the Act East policy, a lot of our effort has been in ensuring that this policy is aligned very closely with the development of the Northeast. So what is the Act East policy? And I will share one definition with you, which says that the Act East policy initiates, stimulates, and accelerates the revival of shared values between the people of India and Southeast Asia and East Asia to strengthen our economic, technological, political, and security ties, and thus ensure a better future of dependable and involved partners for the growth of all countries in emerging Asia. What it really means to say is that we need to align our foreign policy in a way that can take advantage of the fastest growing region in the world, which is really just beyond our own Northeast region. Now, when you talk, whether you talk about the Act East, you talk about neighborhood first, or you talk about the Indo-Pacific outreach, which are all important planks of our foreign policy, there is one factor that is common to all of them, and that is our Northeast region. Without that physical connectivity between our Northeast and Southeast Asia, of course starting with Bangladesh and then into Southeast Asia, we will really not have had that level of connect with the rest of Southeast Asia and beyond. So the Northeast is integral to this, and I think it is a very important part of any foreign policy effort towards the Act East outlook. Now let us see what our Prime Minister had to say on this issue and on the involvement of the Northeast. He says, and I quote him, "My government has been proactively following the Act East policy. I consider the Northeastern region as the gateway of to Southeast Asia. As part of this policy, it is our mission to upgrade the infrastructure in road, rail, telecom, power, and waterways in the region." Now, if you look at the fact that the Act East policy before 2014, before the government of Prime Minister Modi came to power, was referred to as Look East. But when Prime Minister Modi took office, he said it is enough of looking east, we need to act east, we need to do something in concrete terms. And that is why the nomenclature changed to Act East policy. And actually, in actual fact, if you look at the statistics, I think we have significantly upgraded in investments, in terms of outreach, in political contact, in every way manner, our outreach to our neighbors and beyond to the east of India. And one important statistic in this regard, if you see, that our lines of credit that we extend to our own immediate neighborhood has increased from 3.27 billion, about little over 3 billion in 2014, to close to $15 billion today. In other words, we are providing soft loans to our neighbors to develop infrastructure, to develop connectivity with us in a much more pronounced manner. And our investments in our region are much more significant. And of course, why do we do that? I mean, that is one important question. We do that because we can in connecting the region, bring in, as I said, development and benefits to our own country in general, and the Northeast region in particular. There is, of course, one more reason, and that is, of course, to ensure that when you have growth and you have prosperity, then it encompasses the neighborhood. When we talk about Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, and now Sabka Prayas, it has to encompass not just our country, but beyond our country into our immediate neighborhood. And that is an important aspect also of the plank of the Act East policy, is that when you talk about growth and development, you cannot prosper on your own. I mean, today, India is poised to become, close to a $5 trillion economy by 2030. We are the fastest growing large economy in the world. And from that point of view, we have to make sure that our neighbors grow with us. Otherwise, you will have issues that will slow you and hamper your own development and growth. So you take everybody with you. As you grow, you also make sure that your neighbors grow with you. And therefore, an investment in what is called the 3 Cs, connectivity, commerce, and culture. Culture, as in people-to-people ties, is very, very important. And as I said, one of the areas that we've done it is investing very heavily in soft loans, grants and aids to our neighbors. And of course, if you look at the results, they are there for us to see. In terms of the trade, our trade with our neighborhood has increased, I think, increased by almost 50% in the last few years. But it's very significant to note that today Bangladesh is our 5th largest trading partner in the world, and Nepal has emerged as our 10th largest trading partner. Now, the question you might ask yourself is, why has that happened? And one reason for that, of course, is that border infrastructure has become much better. Your connectivity in terms of roads, railway, inland waterways has improved significantly. Your policies, your sound economic policies, your policies with regard to how do you trade with your neighbors, what are the policies in terms of energy exchanges, what are the policies with regard to encouragement of things like border arts, these policies have really contributed to a rapid increase in the integration between us and the South Asian region. The Asian Development Bank had noted at one point that the South Asian region was the least integrated region in the world. But we are rapidly changing that paradigm and making it a very, very integrated region. And I'll speak more on that as we go along. But the fact of the matter is that if we don't, if we don't make these efforts to ensure that we have the necessary outreach to our neighborhood, we may not really succeed in what we are trying to do as a regional and then as a global power as we move along. Now, what is it that we've achieved through these efforts? I mean, one, of course, is that if you look at the connectivity with our immediate neighbors, and I think what is of interest to the Northeast region is mainly Myanmar, which is a gateway to Southeast Asia, and Bangladesh also, in many senses, is also our gateway beyond through Myanmar into the region. Both these countries have a very, very major impact on us in the Northeast, and we need to examine what we have done in this regard. So in terms of railways, of course, I think we have invested very heavily in Bangladesh in building the railway network. We have restored 5 of the 6 original lines, railway connections that were there before 1965, and we are building new lines. And I think it could be safe to say that in a while from now, we should be able to have a train that goes straight from Kolkata to Agartala without stopping through a broad gauge line. And we are almost able to achieve this because the last line, which is between Akhoda and Agartala, is going to be inaugurated sometime very soon. Of course, we have to broad gauge some of those sectors. The bridge across the Padma River also has to be able to take container traffic. But essentially, we are now almost poised to see that a railway can travel across Bangladesh. And as was mentioned earlier by Mr. Shapan Das Gupta, connectivity to Bangladesh's ports, Chittagong and Mongla, are again very close to becoming reality, which opens up seaports to our Northeast region. But in terms of, and of course, if we look at, in another sense, if you look at Nepal, you should be able to travel from Raxaul to Kathmandu by train. If you look at from the point of view of Manipur, the railway line is already going from Jiribam to Imphal, Imphal to Moreh, and from Moreh, if you connect it to Kalay in Manipur, then you're connected to the Trans-Asian Railway network, which means that you can travel by train right through to Bangkok, maybe Singapore as well. So essentially, our connectivity today is going to be something which we could not have imagined 10 years ago. I think we are moving at a rapid rate. One point that I do want to mention is that 10 years ago, when we examined the Look East policy, we did ask ourselves, we said, can we focus on Look East when we have not yet developed our own Northeast region? Unless you have connectivity in the Northeast, you have good roads, you have railway connectivity, you have the ability to integrate this into the rest of Southeast Asia and beyond, how can you work on investing in these countries? And today, I think that problem has been resolved because we have railway lines not only connecting many of our Northeast states, including to Kohima, Imphal, etc. But I think today our road connectivity, our national highways are rapidly, I think, improving, expanding, and I think will integrate again to highways in Bangladesh, Myanmar, and beyond. So that, I think, is a very important factor, that development of the Northeast has to be actually first, then comes our integration with the rest of the neighborhood, and that, again, is something that is very much happening today. So when you talk about road transport, we cannot but mention the trilateral highway, which would connect us with the rest of Southeast Asia. And as you know, a large part of this highway has been completed except one stretch, which is today a little problematic given the situation in Myanmar. But we have no doubt that from the construction of the first bridge across Moray into Tamu to the rest of the 79 bridges and then the highway thereafter, we are in a short way away from seeing a highway that links us to Southeast Asia. But we have another project, which is the Kaladan Multi-Purpose Transport Transit Project, which really links Mizoram, the Northeast through Mizoram into Myanmar, down the river into Sitwe Port. Sitwe Port is already ready. It is an international port, and we are already using it for coastal shipping purposes. But what we really need is to create this highway link, and again, given the situation in Myanmar, that is taking longer than we expected. But ultimately, we are going to find many, many ways to link our Northeast to the sea and link them, provide many more points for them to trade, to establish more international connectivity. And that is, I think, very important, because when we look at the Northeast, we have always seen it being landlocked as a disadvantage. Today, you can turn that disadvantage into an advantage by integrating yourself not only with the rest of India, but also with Southeast Asia, which are your gateways to quick and rapid growth, your markets and your opportunities for tourism and other avenues. So another point of connectivity is very important is inland waterways. I think this is an area which is very less known and I think less emphasized on, but under the Jal Vikas Marg scheme of the government, we have managed to revitalize many of our inland waterways, which at one time were vital avenues for the carriage of goods in many parts of our country. And it is actually the most economical and also the most ecological manner of carrying goods. And here you will have our transport. I think I was happy to see the other day that the newspapers mentioned that we will have now cruise ships sailing from Kolkata into Guwahati. So essentially, by dredging parts of Bangladesh, which we have done on a joint partnership basis, we have ensured that the so-called National Waterway Route 1 and 2 have been combined, and we are able to take our ships, our vessels and our barges right from Varanasi to Guwahati without any impediment. So that is a huge plus for us. Tripura, as a state, has been taking advantage of Indian waterways access into Bangladesh, not only for exporting their goods into Bangladesh, but also bringing it to the rest of our country. So this is a huge plus for us. Integrated checkposts, the Honorable Chief Minister was telling me about how he visited that point where we have the integrated checkposts at Dauki and Tamabil. And I think that is a very important area where by developing border infrastructure, we've been able to increase significantly goods that are exported from the state of Meghalaya to Bangladesh. Now, a quick point here, where are the markets for the Northeast? The markets are not just in the rest of India. The markets lie in our neighboring countries. Bangladesh is a population of 160 million. It's a concentrated population with increasing purchasing power. Your exports, it is a natural export destination for a state like Meghalaya, which is exporting coal, limestone, rock boulders, vegetables, bamboo. Whatever you produce can be actually absorbed in a market which is just below your hills. And I think that is a great advantage that we have by creating the integrated checkpost. We've been trying to ensure that there are up to 400 trucks that can carry coal in a single day across. Of course, we have to address issues like road connectivity and so on. But the point is that we are getting into creating integrated checkposts not only on the India-Bangladesh border, but on the India-Nepal border, on our other borders with Myanmar. Of course, Tamil More is an example. And we are using that to significantly enhance the cargo movement across into our neighboring countries. And it is a much smoother process in that regard. Air connectivity, of course, your airports in Guwahati are linked to Bangkok, Bagdogra is linked to Bangkok. We want to link Imphal to Mandalay has been tried, but I think that is something that is very much on the cards. Now we need much more air connectivity, and as part of our policy, I'm sure that will happen. That our Northeast will be linked in terms of air connectivity to many capitals in Southeast Asia and beyond. One important point I want to mention, and I think this is a game changer, is energy connectivity. I think many of us are not aware that we have recently come up with a cross-border trading policy, cross-border energy policy, where power can be actually traded between Bangladesh and Nepal and Bhutan and Bangladesh through India. Now, as a result of that policy, and into India, of course, as a result of that policy, what we were trying in terms of large government-funded hydel projects in Nepal, that paradigm has changed into private sector investments. The private sector has invested significantly in hydroelectric power projects in Nepal. As a result of that, today I think Nepal is exporting over 1,000 megawatts of energy into India. And that again, I think in terms of India-Nepal relations could change the entire, the way the relationship is seen and will work in the future. In 2010-11, I recall a time when there were riots and demonstrations in the streets of Dhaka because there was no power. And we at that time stepped in and said, we will supply you power. And we connected Bangladesh to the west and east through Tripura as well as through West Bengal. And today we supply over 1,000 megawatts to Bangladesh. They buy the whatever power it needs. It is an area of mutual benefit and another win-win for both our countries. So these are areas where I think we have made huge progress. People-to-people contacts is a very critical element of our cooperation. Whether you talk about tourism, whether you talk about medical tourism, whether you talk about education. India has become an education hub. It's become a medical center. There are new flights actually being announced from Dhaka to Chennai simply because of medical tourism. Not many people know that a lot of people come for medical tourism to across the border from Myanmar into Kohima, across the border from Myanmar into Imphal, because that is where they will get the best treatment. So there are multi-specialty hospitals coming up in these cities, catering to medical tourism from Myanmar, from the regions, the Sagaing division and areas which are across our border. It is far easier for them to come to our country and get medical attention than go to Yangon and other places. So I think this is an area where we should capitalize on, where the Northeast has the ability to utilize that and make the best of that effort. So essentially what we are really doing is connecting our Northeast to the most economically dynamic regions of the world, the ASEAN and the Indo-Pacific, and what we are attempting is to leverage whatever the Northeast has in terms of its strengths. What are the Northeast strengths? I think natural resources is one, whether it is hydropower, whether it is oil, whether it is agricultural produce. I think this is something that we have to look at how we can best leverage it, how we can process agro products so that they can be exported without spoilage. These are very important areas. And this itself is, I think, encouraging a new sort of industry coming up in our northeastern states. I saw that coffee has become a very popular crop in Nagaland, and a lot of it is exported. Similarly, chilies, garlic, turmeric, a lot of our products from the Northeast are very popular in our neighboring countries. And you have a natural market for all of this, which we can exploit. Secondly, of course, human resources is a great skill. I think increasingly, Honorable Chief Minister spoke about integration of the Northeast. I think one of the things that we see everywhere in a lot of cities in India are young people from the Northeast, because they're talented, they're hardworking, they speak English, and they're very much in demand in terms of services within the country. And I think as we become, I would say, our demographics change. We are already one of the youngest countries with an average age of 28. And as we look at a situation where the population in many of the developed countries is population density changes to have a larger, older population supported by a very small workforce, we will have a situation where there will be huge demand for younger people. So we have to look at how we can skill our youth from the Northeast, how we can provide them with the training necessary to go and get the best opportunities across the world, not just in our neighborhood, but I'm talking about Southeast Asia, East Asia, but also the Gulf and beyond. So this is an opportunity where I think there is a huge spin-off benefits, and we should prepare for it early. So finally, of course, needless to say, when you talk about anything that is to do with reaching out to our neighborhood, the role of the armed forces, and when I say the armed forces, I include the paramilitary, I include the agencies, the law and order forces, etc., is very, very critical. In the Ministry of External Affairs, we consider the armed forces to be an extension of our diplomacy. I mean, as a master in Thailand or in Bangladesh, if I had Eastern Army commander come and visit me, it was a great advantage, because he could meet the chief there, he could interact with him, and you could get a lot of things done through the military to military net. And in our entire neighborhood, I think the preponderance of the armed forces is very significant, and we certainly must leverage the contacts that the armed forces can, I would say, deliver for us in a much more significant way than we are used to doing. And I think we have worked very closely with the armed forces in many of these initiatives. Vijay Divas is one area where you have a very large delegation that comes from Bangladesh, of Mukti Jodhas and war veterans who come and spend time in Fort William and in our country. And I think this is a very important way of establishing people-to-people linkages, but also reinforcing our own role in the liberation of Bangladesh and making the country what it is today. And that also goes for the sort of exchanges that we have with Myanmar. When there was COVID and we came out with Covaxin, indigenous production of our own vaccine, the first organization that reached out to us to say that please give us as much of Covaxin as you can was the Myanmar army. So what I'm trying to say is that you have that confidence that others have in us, and of course the Armed Forces Connect, I think, was very important. But having said that, of course, in Myanmar they did say that, look, if you promise to give us vaccines, we will not buy vaccines from anywhere else. Our first choice is India, and people of Myanmar have faith in Indian products and Indian-made vaccines, and I think that was very significant from that point of view. And whether we are looking at a border areas development program with Myanmar, where we are investing in small projects in our immediate borders, or we are looking at the Rakhine State Development Program, any of these, or the Coordinated Border Management Plan with Bangladesh, these are very important aspects where the armed forces has an integral role to play, and is, as I said, is an extension of our own diplomacy. So I only want to say one aspect, of course, is that as we now enter into a period of Amrit Kal, which is essentially the 25 years that leads to our 100th anniversary of independence, and as we aspire to become a developed nation by 2047, what is important is that we utilize whatever opportunities are available to us in accessing the best for our youth and for our generations which are going to be seen, which are going to actually, as the Prime Minister said, those who are 20 today, will be 45 in 2047. And I think this is the generation that's really going to make that difference. We need to invest in that generation, do what we can. And I think that that aspect is extremely critical as we come to consider what we can do in the Northeast and how we can best utilize the potentials of our Northeast area and integrate it not just with with the rest of India, but integrate the Northeast with its own neighbors and with Southeast Asia and beyond. That I think is what the Act East policy, the Neighborhood First policy, and the Indo-Pacific program of the Government of India seeks to do. Once again, my grateful thanks to the Indian Army for inviting me to speak to you on this subject, and we certainly do believe that the armed forces to continue to play that important role in working with our region, with the Northeast region, to integrate it and to make it contribute and vice versa to the national effort. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.